Assalamu alaikum, which is divine peace and blessings be upon all of you. I'd like to show you what I'm looking at right now. I just have my door open and I'm looking at a few things, but what's predominant is the greenery, which I'm enjoying, and the blue sky as I'm sitting in my room with the bed behind me that I need to make, put new sheets, all of that. Greetings, Lenora. That's my cousin. I have to say it like that because we come from somewhere south, DC, North Carolina, Virginia. There's so much that's on my mind right now, and a lot of it is prompted because of this question that I put out on Facebook, which was saying, is there anything about the spiritual aspects of Islam that you would like to know, like that if you have a question? And it more or less turned into the realization that many people, and let me know if the sound is clear, that many people have a lot of questions just about Islam in general, not just aspects of Islam, but just Islam in general. Islam has been in the media, in the news. I mean, since September 11th, it's often been in the news, and for over 100 years, you would say, in Hollywood, Muslims and Arabs have been depicted in Hollywood. And due to different aspects that we don't have to delve into at this moment, that was more often than not in a negative light, in a demeaning light, in a light that showed Arabs and Muslims as being pretty much less, pretty much second class. Their blood was cheap. And that set a stage for what was to come historically. That set a stage for the future of wars that were already planned in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya. I remember years ago, we're talking about more than 15 years or so, I was listening to something from Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was this advisor for, I think, Reagan, Clinton, Jimmy Carter, one of the Bushes. And in his book, he was outlining the countries that we would go into, that we would have to go into. And so when we're looking at what has shaped public opinion and how people see a Muslim woman, the average Muslim woman, or Muslim countries, they may know that individual Muslim or those Muslims they've come across, but there's in many people a subconscious belief or an idea that is juxtaposed what they have been raised with. And the visual is more often than not the first thing that people notice, is what they see. The Muslim woman is presented to the world often in some manner of covering. And so it's interesting that when I ask this question having to do with Islam, and generally whenever that subject comes up with women who are also strong women, have also had their history when it comes to religion, who maybe even identify as feminists and more maybe second wave, third wave form of feminism, there's this energy of sometimes they feel as if they need to save those poor Muslim women who, especially in other countries that are forced to cover up. There's the energy of, well, we're blessed to not be like those women, whose husbands must make them dress in such a oppressive manner. And it's just fascinating to me because there's a lens through which people see. There's a lens through which people see. And so what I wrote recently just now on my Facebook, it was just kind of flowing out of me, was this thing, this idea that comes up so much in my conversation and in my internal conversation with people who are always curious about the connection of the covering, and this idea that if you are covering in some sense, you must be less free. And according to that way of thinking, it means the less clothing, if you have more clothes, then you are less free. So that means if you have less clothes, then you are more free. Everything has its pros and cons, but that way of thinking actually doesn't make any sense if you were to break it down. And I often like to think in extremes. So the extreme way that I interpret that is, so if I am completely naked in front of the world, if I am wearing, maybe if I'm a porn star, for example, that automatically means that I'm more free. So there's this indication that overall freedom is somehow represented by the outer. So again, a person sees a Muslim woman covered up in a country where women are covered up. Of course, that patriarchy did that to them. And it's no chance that anyone could have actually chosen to go to that country like I did. I chose to go to Yemen. It's no chance that people could have chosen that for themselves. No, men designed this. The women, they have succumbed. And so they need to be saved. They are less free. So now if I tomorrow am naked, that automatically assumes I must be more free. So again, a porn star to me should be the most free of anyone, because not only is the body naked for the world to see, but I don't really watch it, but just saying, we know that there's zooming in and there's really like, if the nakedness is made even bigger. It's like we're going to zoom in on that nakedness. So we would assume that those women would be the most free. But when we look at the statistics of joy and happiness, we see that in that demographic, there's a lot of depression. There's a lot of women who are taking drugs to cope. I've watched a lot of videos of women who have been in the industry. I went through a period of time where I was researching those interviews and just trying to understand a bit more about that world, as far as from the perspective of the women who were in it. We see that many have committed suicide. We see that historically, well, not historically, but in their history, many of those women had been sexually molested or abused. We could get into why did that happen? What was the system, or what was set up in their family, or what was the mindset of the individuals around them that did not know how to protect those children? I talked to a woman here in Ubud who does a lot of work with consciousness and connection and communication. She said that every woman that was her friend that she knew of had been molested. That was very shocking to me, because I was taught from a very young age that not anyone should have access to my body. Not anyone should be able to see my body. Not anyone should just be able to touch my body. That was very clear when I was growing up. And I can say that perhaps there was a connection to my mother choosing a path that was religious, choosing Islam perhaps, that gave that clarity of boundaries, and that while there's nothing wrong with nakedness in and of itself, but there's a time and a place for that, and there's a way that you navigate in the world. A child doesn't know any better, but sometimes what I've noticed just from discussions with people is that the more desensitized a person is themselves, the more that carries over into their life. So if they've had a lot of exposure, their boundaries have now dissolved. They don't have the same type of boundaries as someone who's had less exposure. I'm mentioning this as just kind of flowing with what's coming through. But one of the main things I really wanted to talk about is just, what is that idea that people have, and that I feel it's a very incorrect idea. Women who want to support other women should want to do so regardless of what that woman chooses. What I mean by that is there's a support that I would say Muslim women probably need to give themselves first, but that other women who say they want to support women, one way that we support each other is, first of all, just listening, showing interest, asking questions, not assuming that we know. Yeah, we've been exposed to certain knowledge. We may have talked to different people, but oftentimes we will inject our perspective of, for example, in this case, freedom, our perspective of what it looks like, what liberty looks like, what choice looks like, and then we're talking to this person and approaching them as if we know better. The best way to support your Muslim sisters as another woman is to ask, what has your experience been like? What is your experience? Do you choose that? And of course, there's all situations where some people, it's the family, they grow up in it. Some people, it's a situation where the country they live in. There are plenty of Muslim women that probably don't want to wear hijab. And maybe they feel pressured by community. Maybe they feel pressured by judgment of family, of community, that does exist. But the point is that there are still Muslim women that have chosen it, and that they do not feel like they are oppressed in any way, shape, or form. I look at it that everything has pros, everything has cons. Are there cons to it being a hot summer day and you have a lot of extra fabric on? Of course. But why would a person still choose that? Because the pros outweigh the cons. And most likely, the pros are something that can't be seen by you. So the only way you would actually become aware is by asking, why do you choose on a hot summer day to still observe the hijab? Why do you choose in situations where it would be much easier and you would blend in to still observe your outer display of faith? Again, this does not mean that an individual who does not wear hijab is not of faith. There's plenty of women that I know for a fact who do not wear the outer covering that are more shy than I am and have more modesty than I may have and may not navigate in certain worlds that I may be interested to navigate in or be curious about. So I'm just putting that out there to be clear. But the point is that is the most outward display that often is shown and that often brings about the most discussion, and that I think there's the most misunderstanding about, especially when we start getting into discussions of what people, call patriarchy, for example, which is alive, okay. But the fact that the women that want to save Muslim women from patriarchy are themselves not able to overcome the fact that the world is pretty much male dominated. Even the feminist movement was funded by the Rockefellers. It was funded and created by men. The magazines that came out, Gloria Steinem, and these individuals, which it was declassified, that did have work and ties with the CIA, and there was an agenda through certain aspects of second wave feminism that had to do with taxing the other half of the population, that had to do with having access to the children, because before, children were in the home with their mother up into a certain age. When we look at individuals like Hitler, he made it clear that once we have the children, that's it. Like, I'm not worried about the people of this generation. He's like, I got the children. And so if the children can be indoctrinated with the ideas of the state or the country or whatever it is, the government, then that's it. Like, we're preparing the next generation. So that's something for us to reflect on, for those of us who do have children in our life that we care about. Like, what are they being exposed to when they're in school? What are the ideas that they're confronted with on a daily basis? What is it that they're being, quote unquote, indoctrinated with that is prevalent in whatever country we're in? And that will, in some sense, will be in the school system. We're going to be exposed to that. So the subject of what I was talking about as far as the compassion and patience as a Muslim woman who is proud to be Muslim and loves Islam, And for me, Islam is what every single prophet, what every single true prophet came with. It is the surrender to the. Okay, decided to cut. Okay, now we're back. Okay, I was gonna go outside. So this Islam means surrender, and it comes from the root word which means peace. So Islam is surrendering to the greatest power that exists in the universe. Well, not in the universe, out basically that made the universe. That greatest power, we're surrendering to that one that we call Allah, that Jesus called Allah, that Moses called Elohim. When we look in the Bible, for example, in the Aramaic, there's a verse that even though Muslims don't believe that Jesus was crucified, we believe in the pure birth of Jesus. We believe that his mother Mary, she is from the highest women in Islamic faith. There's no woman that has a higher status in Islam than the mother of Jesus for us. Nevertheless, we don't believe he was crucified. That's the one thing that we're taught, that another person was made to look like Jesus. That man was crucified. But aside from that, in the Bible that we have today, there's a verse that says when Jesus, or this person that looked like Jesus, was on the cross, said, Ila, ila, lema sabaktani. Or Allah, Allah, why did you forsake me? So even if I'm an individual who wants to be as close as possible to the languaging that was used by Jesus, I would use a name that's closer to Allah than, for example, God. He never said God, not one time in his life. So, I'm going on a tangent. Because this is just, I'm just speaking from my head and my heart. Maybe someone can remind me what was the last thing I said. But I know that I was going back to the subject of compassion and being a woman who has my convictions in regards to Islam, and Islam being this path of surrender that leads to peace. I know. It's not I think. It's not maybe. It's not perhaps. I know that there are gems, that there are beautiful awarenesses that would benefit any individual in this world who has an open heart. That I know for sure. There's absolutely no doubt within myself in regards to that. And I've seen it because just reciting Quran to people of every single background, whether I was in Portugal, whether I was in Thailand, whether I was in Malaysia, which is a Muslim country, whether I've been in Indonesia, like as now living in Bali, which is a predominantly Hindu island, although there are Muslims here. In every circle I've been in, non-religious circles, circles where people just probably wouldn't even want to hear that word. And yet, when they hear the Quran, the way it touches their heart, that in and of itself is a proof for me. The way the tears come, the way they approach me after, and they say to me, I feel like I've heard this before. I feel like this, I've never heard anything like this, and it's affecting me in a way that's very deep. I was at a cacao ceremony at a place called, doesn't even matter, this big venue here. And it was my first time attending. And there was an opportunity to recite, and so I recited. The mic was open at the end. Someone approached me and she said, from the whole night, that was what touched me the most. That wasn't because of me. That's because it's connected to something that the hearts can recognize. That every heart that, especially that is open enough and willing, and sometimes even if they're not, can recognize. And then when we start getting into just basic wisdoms, I see that there's a lack of clarity that so many have in regards to our purpose. Like, why is humanity on this earth? Why is it that we are here? What is our purpose as a people? And when we don't know where we came from, and to us it's an amorphous, ambiguous type of existence, and we're unsure of the origins, and so that means we don't know exactly where we're going, then that is what can cause people to feel the levels of depression that they feel. That is what contributes to the level of disconnect that people feel, no matter how spiritual they say that they are. Someone that works within the spiritual realm of people who are spiritual said that many people who were living here in the community, he had 4 or 5 people calling saying they wanted to commit suicide, that they didn't want to live. Where does that come from? People are meditating, they have meditation, they have all the different practices, but for some reason that's not enough. Why is that? They have the talk of oneness. I hear people saying we're all one, we're all one, we're all one, but somehow just knowing that we're one and sitting in silence can only bring people, it seems, but so far. What I am saying is not because I want to say, oh, this is better, this is worse, such and such and such. But it's because there has to be, even if it's one person out there, that they want a different perspective. They want to be open to something, and their heart is calling them. And when they think about the fact that they will inevitably die, that there's a part of them that needs to know something that perhaps is with me that I can share. I can't worry about judgment. I can't worry about what the majority think, because as far as I am concerned, when we look at the masses, especially in these times, the masses are not the decision makers. The masses don't even have autonomy over their own selves. So why should I be concerned? I'm concerned about sharing that which my heart is called to share, that which my Creator has called me to share, and trust that the person who needs to hear it at the time that they need to hear it will hear it. People have an issue with religion. At the same time, we look at studies that were done, a German study that was done sometime last year, that had nothing to do with religion and was not in any way trying to promote religion. And it said that those who had the greatest happiness and joy and peace, I think it said happiness to be fair, were people of religion. Not the purpose of the study, but that's what they found out. And then who was at the top here? I'm not making this up. This is an actual study. If you go on my page, you can scroll down, you can find the link, and at the top of that were Muslims. These were not Muslims who were trying to prove a point about Muslims. This was just a study, and it just happened to find out that those in the world, from the ones that they had researched, I don't know if it was 100,000, I don't know how many people, I don't want to exaggerate, it might have been 1,000, but the point is that's what they noticed. And again, you can look at the link that's on my page. So my point is that if I were not, suppose they said, we did a study, in Germany they said we did a study and we looked at different demographics, and the happiest people from that the happiest demographic were those who walked barefoot in the sand every day. Wouldn't we be trying to go walk barefoot in the sand if we had any sense? If the study had said out of all the people that we surveyed, the happiest people in this world were those who believed in aliens and just knew that an alien ship was going to come for them and bring them to the mother or whatever, bring them to wherever they're going to go with the aliens. I think people would be standing out there, oh, please come aliens, please come get me, just beam me down, just or beam me up, just they would do that, I'm sure. If the study has said that the most happy people in this world are those that garden, and people were sure of the study, we were sure that the study existed and all of that, wouldn't people start gardening who actually want to be happy? So wouldn't it make sense that if the study is saying that people who have religion and people who are Muslim had the highest rank of happiness, wouldn't it make sense to maybe perhaps look into at least, why is that? It said that Muslims have the highest ranks when it comes to oneness. I still have to research more exactly what they meant by that. But I know for myself how Islam, this again, which means surrender to the one source, the creator that brought everything into existence, that to me has given me a feeling of connection to everything. That everything, there's a verse in the Quran, for example, that says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سبح لله ما في السماوات في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. The first part of that is saying that everything in the heavens and the earth is praising, is essentially worshiping, surrendering to God. Everything. So if I believe that my purpose for existence is to surrender and align myself with the one that brought everything into existence, and then I'm reading that verse in the Quran and it's saying that everything in the heavens and the earth is doing that, isn't that going to make me feel connected? Isn't that going to make me feel connected to the trees, to the rocks, to the water, to the sun, to the rain? Yes. There are narrations from Prophet Muhammad where he spoke about a woman who was a prostitute. Nowadays, what is it politically correct to say? A sex worker. And this woman had all of her slate of her deeds wiped clean because she fed a dog water. Isn't that going to make me think differently about the woman who ends up in a line of work? Maybe because she needed the money, maybe because she was put into it not on purpose, not from her own desire, maybe because anything could be the situation. Molested or harmed when she was younger. Whatever it is, that narration from Prophet Muhammad is going to make me look at a woman who is having sex for money and have compassion for her. It also is going to make me look at that dog in a different light. That even though we're taught in Islam that the tongue of the dog has something that, yeah, there's an antibacterial effect for itself, but there's also some kind of bacteria that can be harmful. So it's considered impure for us. Nevertheless, that woman enters paradise because a woman who is selling her body for sex, according to Prophet Muhammad, enters paradise, heaven. Not like the heaven that's explained with just clouds and all that. That's boring, just to be honest. But anyway, that's not our heaven, just so you know. But just saying that enters paradise because she fed a dog water. So going back to the study which said that Muslims feel that connectedness, yes, I feel that connectedness to the dog, to the cat, to the animal that is hungry or thirsty, because, and even if I'm not acting in that work or I'm not participating in that work, when I see someone like, there's this one woman, Sharon, who's on my post, who's on my list, Sharon Love, always saving dogs and animals, and she recently saved one named Rose. She saw it lying there. I feel a love for her. I feel a compassion for her because she's doing that. To me is worship. That's a type of worship that makes me feel connection. When I look at the verse that talks about, the narration from Prophet Muhammad that says that any person who plants a tree and that tree bears fruit, that anyone who takes shade under that tree or eats from that fruit, that man, he now gains all of these blessings that come into his life. Because we have this way that we understand that everything we do is taken into accountability. And so every time a person sits under the shade of that tree, so wouldn't that let me feel a certain connection to the farmer, to the one who's growing trees or growing food or feeding people? Prophet Muhammad, he said that me and the one who take care of the orphan are like this in paradise. Again, that's Islam is building with me a connection to the orphan, to those who are in need. Prophet Muhammad also taught us that if one of us starts to feel like, I don't have enough, maybe you feel like, oh, this person's so wealthy, I'm not. This person has a beautiful big house, I don't. Or this person has gold, I don't. This person has a partner or a husband or a wife or whatever, I don't. Or this person has, it could be anything. People care about skin. Oh, this person has clear skin, I don't. This person, it could be anything that makes you feel bad about yourself or makes you feel like you have less. But now, Prophet Muhammad is saying, don't look to that. Look to what is the people who have less than you, who are in more hardship than you, building a connection. Prophet Muhammad taught us that the one who harms someone or kills someone, it is as if he killed all of humanity. And the one who saves someone and helps someone, it's as if they've saved all of humanity. So that is going to also build with me a connection to the individuals that are working in that way, that are striving to save others, to help others, to aid others. I could go on and on. Literally, I could go on and on. To the level of connection and oneness in that sense that Islam has given me in my life. Through the Quran, through the teachings of Prophet Muhammad. Why Islam? Couldn't I get the same thing from any other religion? In my situation, I've looked into others and I would say not to that precision for me. I haven't noticed that. I haven't noticed that level of precision. Balanced out with the protection aspects of how do we protect ourselves physically, energetically, how do we protect our environment? Prophet Muhammad spoke about, for example, the trees, the importance of, even if there's a war, not to cut down the trees. To spare also women and children, that even if an enemy comes to you, they come to you now, on your land, on your territory, to kill you, you spare the women and the children. Now let's look at our governments. Let's look at the U.S. government. And did they spare women and children? Did they spare women and children? Did they have no problem being allies with countries and individuals that slaughtered men and women, children, old people in cold blood? No problem whatsoever. So there's a balance, because Islam, for me, again, this surrender to guidance from God, and God is a balance. It's a whole way of life. It's a whole system of being that goes into every single arena. It doesn't cut out one area. Whether you die and there's inheritance, that's dealt with. When you marry or divorce, that's dealt with. Sexual intimacy and foreplay, that's dealt with. How you protect and save the environment, that's talked about. How you are to animals, that's talked about. How you should eat healthy food. Allah says in the Quran, كُلُوا مِن طَيِّبَاتِ مَا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ. Kulu, eat, min tayyibati, from the tayyibat, from the good, pure things that I have provided for you. That's in the Quran. So there's literally, when I say there is nothing left unturned, there's nothing left unturned. We are in a time where people need guidance. We need guidance. That is obvious. We need guidance. We need to know how to operate, how to navigate our internal geography. We can't even go from here to a neighbor's house or someone's house without GPS, without using an external device to navigate from point A to point B and then back home. Even after we've gone there, we still need to get back home, right? For some reason, we don't understand, or we're gaining understanding, and I'll speak in that way, that our internal geography can be even more complicated than the external geography. External geography is one thing. You can use that GPS, you can use that phone to navigate externally. What about your internal geography? Who is helping you to navigate your internal geography? I'm being clear that I do not ascribe to the idea that we only go within ourselves. We only sit in silence and all the answers are inside of us. No, we have a portal of connection to receive the answers. But the fact that we need to sit in silence, or not eat certain food, or not overdo it with sexual activity with certain people, or not drink too much, or not do or whatever, the fact that there needs to be certain things in place for us to access that wisdom and that knowledge is an evidence in and of itself that we are not the same as that source that has all knowledge. Because if that were the case, we wouldn't have to do all that. That in and of itself, to me, is the biggest evidence that we need, apparently, to reach out to something that has more knowledge, more awareness, more power, more ability than we do. Because at the end of the day, I don't remember when there was no time or space. Scientists, astrophysicists, they talk about time-space continuum. As the universe expands, as we go forward in time, universe expanding. As we go back in time, universe contracting to a single point. Time-space continuum states that when, not verbatim, that when space came into being, time came into being. When space came into being, time came into being. That means that whatever originated that single point from which space came about and time came about, that intelligence, that one, operated outside of time and space. I don't remember that. I don't remember it. So if I'm the same as one that is that powerful, that able to bring time and space into being, I should at least remember it, right? But I don't. I still need to eat. Probably not as much as I do. I probably could eat a meal like every 3 days and like actually get hungry every 3 days. I usually just eat when I want to eat, right? Unless I'm fasting, like now, which is, it's Ramadan. I still have to go to use the bathroom. I still if I'm cut, I bleed. The point is, I still have some limitations. So this whole idea of us being limitless, it sounds good. It sounds so good. It's like, limitless. I'm a limitless being. I'm so limitless. There are limits that I will never reach as far as my human capability. That's for sure. Like an ant walking in Spain. It's never going to reach from one point to the next, because even if it had the capability physically, it needs to be with its colony, it needs to be with its tribe, it needs to eat, it needs to work within a system. So it may feel limitless because it keeps walking. It's like, oh, there's no limit to where I can go. It's so vast, but there's still limits. So we're not limitless beings. Whatever brought this universe into existence, the one that I call Allah, the one that Moses called Elohim, the one that Jesus said Allah, Ilah, or Allah, Allah, in Aramaic, in the Bible, in the original language, that one, that source, that one that originated all, one is limitless. That is the one I want to align myself with. That is the one that I remind everyone around me to tap into that connection as much as possible. There are a lot of people right now who are very depressed. I am asking you that if something of this resonates with you and you're talking to a person who is feeling that empty, who is feeling like they don't, remind them of that. Give them support. Give time to people. We have to be patient. We can be patient with the person that gives us what we want, what we desire. We can be patient to be around what is going to give us what we like. But what about your grandmother? Or what about your uncle? Or what about that neighbor that you had before? Or what about someone that was reaching out to you because they're drawn to you or they need something from you, but you don't have time for them because they don't fit into what it is that you specifically desire to connect with at that time? Don't be selfish. Because then later on, if you hear that that person died or they killed themselves, oh, I should have, oh, I didn't, it's too late. No, it's too late. I don't want to hear it. Y'all talk about the universe. The universe doesn't want to hear it. God doesn't want to hear it. So, going back to what I was saying about patience and compassion, as a Muslim woman who absolutely loves this path of surrender, not saying that I don't at times want to know what's beyond that, not saying that at times I'm not always holding on to every single thing in that path, but even Allah doesn't expect that. Allah said, كل بني آدم خطاء. The Prophet Muhammad said, كل بني آدم خطاء وخير الخطائين التوابون. All of the children of Adam, all people are going to do what we call sin. Sin is anything that makes you distant from your Creator. There are certain qualities that are divine. There are certain actions that align you with divine. There's some things that don't. The things that align you with the divine are worship. The things that, meaning, let's re-navigate the way we look at that word is what I'm trying to say to you. Because people think of the word sin and they think people Bible thumping or thumping on their religious book and just like, you sinners, you're going to hell. Like that's what people think of. But that's not what we're talking about in that exact way. But in a sense also in that exact way. Because what I want to ask you is, everything that people have considered or called sin, and if you look at the world and what has stemmed from that, let's say just for example, drinking. In some traditions that's considered a sin in Islam. How much harm has actually come from alcohol? How many babies born with different syndromes? How many people who made stupid mistakes from drinking too much? How many people going in accidents? You have a whole group called Mothers, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD. You have entire organizations of people who lost their children because of that, etc., and so on, without going too deep into that. Things that are called sin are called that because they remove you and they distance you from that divine connection and closeness. And what happens when a human being is disconnected in that way, which is their purpose? Our purpose is to connect in that way. What happens? They feel empty. They feel depressed. They commit suicide, etc., etc. Bukowski said in a beautiful poem that there is this emptiness in the heart that even in the best of times you will know that there is an emptiness in the heart that will never be filled. No, sorry, he says there's this space, and that you will wait and wait in that space. Look at Bukowski's life. amazing writer, amazing poet, because he was raw, he was real, he didn't lie, he was honest about his filth, he was honest about his womanizing, he was honest about how he used to drink all the time, he was honest about how dirty he was. He was honest. That's why I love the work of Bukowski. And what did he say? He knew there was an emptiness inside, there was a space inside, and he said, even in the best of times, you'll know that that space will not be filled. Then we have an Islamic scholar who was known for purification of the heart, the spiritual heart, and he says almost the same words, even though he was centuries before. He says that there's this void in the heart that will never be filled, except with knowing, we say Allah, knowing the Creator, being dutiful to what goes with knowing the Creator and the guidance that comes from that. And that once an individual does that, that is when they will fill that hole, and they will feel that. What I'm talking about is something that can be experimented with. I'm not talking about something that's so out there that you're not going to feel it. If a person just takes a moment when they are alone, cuts off the internet, puts the phone aside, takes the same time that people take when they take 10 days, they go to Vipassana, okay, take 1 day of Vipassana. And in that silence, say, maybe I'm unsure, maybe I think that I am the same as God, maybe, but I want to experiment right now. You who brought me into existence, I'm not sure about you, but I heard this girl talking on her Facebook Live, Hasna. You don't have to say all that, but I'm being me. So if there is something that I need to know that I don't know, that is beneficial for my soul, that is beneficial for my existence in this life, and whatever happens after, open my heart to it, guide me to it, make it clear to me. If you have a name that you want me to know that I don't know, show me, guide me. I recommend people to experiment with using Allah. See how you feel. If you don't feel absolutely anything, doing that with sincerity, asking for guidance, you should beg every day for guidance. Every day. Because the hearts have been covered with so much. We have been indoctrinated since we were children. Our parents have been indoctrinated. Our grandparents have been indoctrinated with things that remove us from tapping into that connection and asking for guidance. It's up to you. You know, it's up to you. I'm just sharing what is coming up. And I realize that this path of sharing takes patience, and it takes compassion. It takes compassion. And so I hope that if you missed anything, I hope that this is something that benefits you. I know I'm here for a purpose. I know what my purpose is. And it's upon me to share. My heart, the words of guidance, the recitation of the Quran, my touch, my nurturing. That's part of my DNA. And so I'll end with the Fatiha, which is the chapter that every Muslim, when you see them go, Allahu Akbar, it's sad that the word Allahu Akbar, which is such a beautiful statement, meaning that there's nothing greater than the Creator, essentially, has been, I'll say, bastardized and removed from its original meaning. But it's verses that are praising the Creator and asking for guidance on the straight path. Every Muslim knows these, even if they don't practice. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العظيم. And Allah speaks the truth. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for listening. Thank you for using precious time to be with me in whatever shape or form, for whoever listens after as well. Lots of love. And also, I think this is Carlos. Thank you, Carlos, also for staying. And yeah, peace and blessings.